Love, the most intoxicating promise we ever chase, and the most devastating illusion we ever endure. It begins with a spark so bright it blinds us, two souls colliding, hearts racing, the world momentarily reduced to the orbit of one another's eyes. In that early glow, we speak of forever as if it were an inevitability, not a choice. And yet, time and again, the story ends the same way, with silence, distance, and the quiet collapse of something we once swore would never break. Why does this happen? Why do relationships, even the ones that feel destined, sacred, soul-bound, so often deteriorate into disconnection, resentment, or indifference? It's tempting to blame it on circumstance, on incompatibility, on falling out of love, but beneath those surface explanations lies a darker, more unsettling truth. Most relationships don't collapse because people stop loving each other. They collapse because they don't understand what love truly asks of them. This question haunted Friedrich Nietzsche, who warned that love is not merely a feeling but a task, a lifelong work of art that demands transformation. Søren Kierkegaard went further, suggesting that most people never even experience true love because they confuse it with the comfort of being desired rather than the courage of deeply knowing and being known. And Carl Jung believed that relationships fail because they force us to confront the unconscious parts of ourselves, the shadows we would rather never see. This video is an invitation to sit with this uncomfortable truth, not to despair over it, but to understand it. Because if we can see why most relationships fail, we can begin to see how they might endure. Over the next hour, we'll explore 6 profound insights drawn from philosophy, psychology, and lived human experience that will radically reframe how you think about love. These are not romantic cliches or self-help slogans. They are hard-won truths, sometimes painful, often paradoxical, but they are also deeply liberating. If you stay with me, by the end you'll understand not just why love so often collapses, but how it might finally last. There's a moment, and if you've ever loved deeply, you know it, when the person you once adored becomes almost unrecognizable. It might happen quietly, a conversation that feels colder than usual, a familiar smile that no longer melts you, a silence that lingers where laughter used to live. You look at them and wonder, where did it all go? How can the same person who once made your heart race now leave you feeling nothing at all? This is the moment most people say they fell out of love, but that's not quite true. What actually happened is far more subtle and far more revealing. The reality is this: we never loved them to begin with, not fully. We loved the story we told ourselves about who they were. We loved the version of them that existed in the theater of our imagination. And when reality walks on stage and the illusion dissolves, we mistake our disappointment for love's disappearance. Friedrich Nietzsche warned about this human tendency to idolize and love. We love not the person, he wrote, but what we hope they are. In other words, love begins as a kind of beautiful deception, not malicious, but inevitable. We see the best, we ignore the rest, we build temples out of fragments, and when the whole person emerges with their flaws, contradictions, and ordinariness, the temple cracks under its own weight. Arthur Schopenhauer, ever the pessimist, took this even further. He believed romantic love was nature's trick, a biological illusion designed to ensure reproduction. It fills us with longing, blinds us to incompatibilities, and only once its evolutionary purpose is served does the enchantment fade. Whether you accept that view or not, his point lingers. Love's first form is rarely love itself. It is a mirage. This isn't a failure. It's a necessary stage. The illusion serves a purpose. It draws us close enough to one another to begin the real work. The problem is that most people never move beyond it. They spend the lifespan of their relationship clinging to the image they first fell for. And when that image fades, they assume love has died. But what if this moment, this disillusionment, isn't the end of love, but the beginning of it? To truly love someone is to meet them in their fullness. It's to accept not just their beauty, but their brokenness, not just their potential, but their limits. Real love isn't a mirror reflecting our ideal. It's a window revealing reality, and reality is always more complex, more human, more raw. Think of it like a garden. The early days of love are like planting seeds in spring. Everything blooms effortlessly, but eventually the seasons change. The blossoms fade. The soil demands tending. If we mistake the fading flowers for failure, we walk away before the roots have a chance to deepen. But if we stay, if we water, prune, and nurture, something sturdier, more enduring begins to grow. This is why so many relationships collapse. They were built for the season of infatuation, not the climate of reality. And when reality arrives, as it always does, people flee, thinking the magic is gone. But the truth is, the real magic hasn't even started. So the question is not, how do I stay in love? The question is, can I learn to love beyond the illusion? Can I choose to see the person as they are, not as I wish them to be, and still say yes to them? Because that yes, the one offered after the fantasy has crumbled, is where love finally begins. There's a moment early in almost every love story that feels nothing short of miraculous. You fall asleep on the phone, talk for hours without noticing the time, finish each other's sentences, and feel as though you're not just with someone, you're inside them. In those first months, the boundary between you and them seems to dissolve, and in that dissolution, you feel something primal, a return to wholeness. This is no accident. It's written deep into our biology and our mythology. From Plato's Symposium to modern psychology, humans have long believed that love's highest form is union, two halves becoming one. Plato even imagined humans as once androgynous beings, split apart by the gods, condemned to wander the earth, seeking their other half. And when we find them, we try, instinctively, desperately, to merge. But here's the paradox. The very thing that desire craves, fusion, is the very thing that love cannot survive. Søren Kierkegaard warned that romantic love always teeters on the edge of idolatry. We don't just want closeness, we want absorption. But when one person becomes the other's everything, individuality begins to erode. And with individuality goes mystery, and with mystery goes desire. This is one of love's cruel ironies. We think closeness is proof of passion, but too much closeness suffocates it. The fire of attraction needs oxygen, and oxygen is found in distance. French philosopher Simone de Beauvoir argued that authentic love is not about fusion, but two freedoms choosing each other. In other words, real love isn't two people becoming one. It's two whole people walking side by side. When love becomes a means of escape from ourselves, it stops being love and becomes dependency. And dependency, though often dressed as devotion, is a silent killer of relationships. Psychology echoes this. In attachment theory, relationships thrive in a secure base, where closeness coexists with autonomy. Too much enmeshment breeds suffocation. Too much distance breeds abandonment. Healthy love isn't about choosing one over the other. It's about mastering the tension between them. Think of a dance. If two dancers cling too tightly, they lose the rhythm. If they drift too far apart, they lose the connection. The art lies in the space between the subtle give and take that lets each move independently while still in sync. Love, too, is a dance, one that requires both proximity and space. This is where many relationships falter. Early on, the gravitational pull of desire draws us together. But once fusion is achieved, desire fades. What was once magnetic becomes mundane. We blame boredom, incompatibility, or lack of effort. But the truth is, we've unknowingly smothered the very thing we were trying to nurture. The solution is counterintuitive. To keep love alive, we must protect the distance. That means nurturing our individuality, our passions, friendships, dreams, not as threats to the relationship, but as fuel for it. It means allowing our partner to remain slightly mysterious, a universe we'll never fully conquer. It means remembering that intimacy is not about losing ourselves in another person, but about finding new ways to meet them again and again. When you create that space, when you allow two people to breathe within the bond, something beautiful happens. Desire returns, and not the desperate, consuming desire of early romance, but a deeper, steadier flame, the kind that doesn't burn out because it isn't trying to devour. So ask yourself, in your relationships, have you been chasing fusion when you should be nurturing distance? Have you confused closeness with connection or dependency with devotion? Love is not the erasure of boundaries. It is the sacred tension between two distinct souls who choose again and again to bridge the space between them. And in that space, not in the merging, but in the meeting, love truly lives. If this idea resonates with you, consider subscribing. Each week, we explore the deeper layers of questions like this, not to give easy answers, but to help you see love and life with new eyes. Have you ever noticed how the very traits that once drew you to someone often become the same things that drive you away? At first, their confidence feels magnetic. Later, it feels arrogant. Their spontaneity once thrilled you. Now it just seems irresponsible. The sensitivity that once felt like emotional depth now seems like overreaction. This reversal isn't random. It's one of the most revealing patterns in human love and one of the most destructive. To understand it, we need to step into the world of Carl Jung, the Swiss psychoanalyst, who gave us the concept of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we repress, deny, or disown because they don't fit the image we have of who we're supposed to be. These shadow elements don't disappear. They simply go underground, and from there, they shape our relationships in ways we rarely see. Hear Espes, how it happens. We meet someone. They possess qualities we feel drawn to, not realizing that those qualities often represent the parts of ourselves we've buried. The confident person awakens our repressed ambition. The sensitive one mirrors the vulnerability we've been taught to suppress. The chaotic one embodies the freedom we secretly crave. This is projection, the unconscious act of placing our own hidden traits onto another person. At first, it's intoxicating. We're not just falling for them, we're falling for a disowned part of us. But over time, This dynamic shifts. Once the honeymoon haze fades, the very traits we once adored become reminders of our own inner conflict. What was once attractive now feels intolerable, not because it changed, but because we haven't integrated that part of ourselves. Jung described relationships as mirrors, and not the flattering kind. Everything that irritates us about others, he wrote, can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. The resentment, frustration, and disappointment we feel toward our partners often have less to do with them and more to do with the shadow work we've avoided within ourselves. This is why so many relationships end in blame. We accuse the other of changing when in reality they simply stopped carrying the weight of our projections. We punish them for being human because we refuse to face the parts of ourselves they reflect. But here's the crucial truth. Projection isn't a flaw, it's an invitation. Relationships must begin with projection, because that's how intimacy starts. They lure us toward what we're missing. But if we never move beyond projection into integration, the relationship becomes a battleground. To break this cycle, we must do the hardest work love demands. We must look inward. This means asking uncomfortable questions. What parts of myself am I seeing and reacting to in my partner? What traits do I admire or despise in them that might reflect something unresolved in me? How much of my frustration is really about them, and how much is about my own shadow? When we begin to own these parts, to integrate rather than outsource them, something profound shifts. The relationship becomes less about fixing the other and more about understanding ourselves. The blame softens into compassion. Criticism becomes curiosity, and in that space, intimacy deepens. Think of it like holding a mirror. At first, we look into it hoping to see someone else, but slowly, we realize we're looking at ourselves, our fears, our wounds, our longings, refracted through another's life. And if we're brave enough to face what we see, we stop demanding that our partner complete us and start meeting them as an equal. This, ultimately, is the secret power of love. It is not just a union of two people. It is a conversation between two unconscious minds, each trying to become whole. And if we allow that conversation to happen honestly, love stops being a battlefield of projections and becomes a classroom for self-knowledge. The question then is not, is this person right for me, but what are they showing me about myself? Answer that with courage and humility, and your relationships will no longer collapse under the weight of your shadow. They will become the forge in which you both grow. We live in a culture that worships feelings, from movies and music to social media and self-help. We're taught that love is something we feel, a surge of emotion, a rush of chemistry, a spontaneous fire that burns effortlessly when it's meant to be. And when that fire dims, as it inevitably does, we assume something is wrong. We panic. We start to wonder if we chose the wrong person, or if love has simply run its course. But here's a sobering truth. Feelings are not meant to last. They are fleeting by design. Nature's way of drawing us together, not of keeping us together. What remains after that first wave isn't proof that something is broken. It's proof that the real work of love is just beginning. This was the core insight of Erich Fromm, one of the most profound thinkers on love in the 20th century. In his classic work, The Art of Loving, he argued that love is not a passive emotion we fall into. It is an active practice we commit to. Love, he wrote, is an art just as living is an art. If we want to learn how to love, we must proceed in the same way we have to if we want to learn any other art, music, painting, carpentry. In other words, love is a skill, and like any skill, it demands effort, patience, and discipline. Aristotle saw it similarly. He believed that virtue itself, the essence of a good life, was not a state of feeling, but a habit cultivated through repeated action. Courage isn't the absence of fear, but the act of facing it. Justice isn't a mood, but a daily choice. And love, too, is not a spark, but a sustained practice of care, attention, and devotion. This shift in perspective changes everything. If love is a feeling, then we are powerless, victims of its rise and fall. But if love is a discipline, then we are responsible. We become its craftsmen, and our relationships stop being accidents of passion and start becoming works of art. Think about it this way. No one expects a pianist to master Chopin after falling in love with the sound of a piano. They practice scales, technique, discipline, day after day. The same is true for love. We must learn how to listen when we'd rather speak. We must practice patience when we'd rather withdraw. We must show kindness when resentment feels easier. These aren't acts of passion, they're acts of choice, and it's those choices repeated over time that build trust, deepen connection, and sustain intimacy. This doesn't mean feelings don't matter. They do. They're the soil in which love is planted. But soil alone doesn't grow a garden. It needs tending. It needs water and sunlight and weeding, and those require discipline, the unglamorous, unromantic work of showing up even when we don't feel like it. Modern psychology backs this up. Relationship researcher John Gottman found that what separates lasting couples from failing ones isn't the absence of conflict or the intensity of passion. It's the small, consistent acts of attention and repair. The couples who thrive aren't necessarily the ones who feel the most in love. They're the ones who practice love most faithfully. So the next time the spark fades, and it will resist the temptation to interpret it as failure, instead see it as an invitation. Ask yourself, how can I practice love today? How can I choose to care, even when it's hard? How can I cultivate this bond, not as a feeling to be chased, but as a garden to be tended? Because love that depends only on emotion is destined to die. But love that becomes a discipline, a living practice of commitment, compassion, and presence, can endure almost anything. Most of us grow up fearing conflict. We associate it with dysfunction, rejection, or the beginning of the end. Raised on fairy tales and Hollywood romances, we imagine that true love is effortless, that two people perfectly aligned will glide through life in harmonious agreement. And when reality intrudes, when arguments erupt, tempers flare, or silence hardens into resentment, we panic. We assume something is wrong. If we were really right for each other, we think it wouldn't be this hard. But this belief is not only false, it's dangerous. It's the reason so many relationships break apart at the first sign of turbulence. Because the truth is, conflict isn't proof of love's failure. It's proof that something deeper is trying to emerge. Think of iron. On its own, it's brittle and breakable. But when subjected to fire, to pressure and heat, it transforms into steel. Relationships are no different. Without conflict, they remain fragile, polite, superficial, easily broken. But when two people are willing to step into the fire together, to argue, to clash, to challenge and be challenged, the bond that emerges on the other side is stronger, truer, and more resilient. This idea traces back to Hegel, the German philosopher who believed that growth in people, in societies, in love, happens through dialectic, the collision of opposing forces. Truth, he argued, isn't found in harmony, but in the tension between thesis and antithesis, and their eventual synthesis. In the same way, real intimacy isn't born from perfect agreement, it's forged in the friction of difference. Modern psychology confirms this. John Gottman, one of the world's leading relationship researchers, has shown that conflict is not a predictor of divorce, but how couples handle conflict is. The happiest, longest-lasting couples still argue. They still fight. But they fight well with respect rather than contempt, with curiosity rather than defensiveness, with a desire to understand rather than to win. When done consciously, conflict becomes a form of communication, one that says, I care enough to tell you the truth. I care enough to stay and wrestle with this. Avoiding conflict, on the other hand, often signals apathy. As therapist Esther Perel often says, the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference, and indifference is the slow death of intimacy. But this doesn't mean every argument is healthy. Most people fight not to understand, but to defend. We weaponize words, dig trenches, and turn disagreements into wars. The goal isn't resolution, it's victory, and in the process, trust erodes. What begins as conflict becomes combat. The key is learning how to transform conflict from a battlefield into a bridge that begins with intention. The next time an argument arises, pause and ask yourself, what is this really about? Beneath the surface issue, the dishes, the schedule, the tone, there's almost always a deeper need, a longing for respect, a fear of abandonment, a desire to be seen. If you can speak to that deeper layer, and if you can listen for it in your partner, conflict becomes an opportunity for profound understanding. It also requires humility. Healthy conflict means being willing to be wrong, to change, to grow. It means seeing the argument not as a threat to the relationship, but as a tool for refining it. Like metal hammered into shape, each clash can make the bond stronger if we let it. So don't fear the fire. Learn to stand in it together, because if you never argue, you never risk. And if you never risk, you never deepen. The couples who last are not the ones who avoid conflict. They are the ones who transform it. They emerge from it with clearer boundaries, deeper trust, and a more authentic connection. They understand that intimacy isn't the absence of friction. It's what happens because of it. The question then is not whether you fight, it's whether you grow from the fight. And if you do, what emerges isn't just a stronger relationship, it's a deeper love, one that's been tempered by fire and made unbreakable by understanding. From the time we're young, we're fed a powerful story that love is about finding the one, a soulmate, who will fill our emptiness, heal our wounds, and make us whole. It's a beautiful story, but it's also one of the most dangerous illusions we ever internalize. Because the moment we believe another person is the missing piece of our puzzle, we build a relationship not on love, but on need. And what is built on need rarely survives. This is the paradox at the heart of human connection. We seek love to feel complete, but only those who are already complete can truly love. The ancient Greeks understood this. In Plato's Symposium, Aristophanes tells the famous myth of the split soul, that humans were once whole beings, divided in two by the gods, forever searching for their lost halves. But Plato himself offered a subtler truth. Love, he argued, is not about recovering a missing piece. It's about striving together toward the good, toward wisdom, toward growth. The highest form of love is not dependency, it is a shared pursuit. Centuries later, Carl Jung echoed this sentiment. He believed the most dangerous relationships are those formed by two incomplete people clinging to each other's wounds. The meeting of two personalities, he wrote, is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But that transformation can only happen if both substances exist in their own right. Otherwise, the bond becomes fusion, and fusion, as we saw earlier, suffocates growth. Consider this: if you approach love as a remedy for loneliness, you will shape yourself around the fear of being alone. You will compromise what matters most to keep the other person near. You will tolerate disrespect, betray your boundaries, or silence your needs, all because losing them feels like losing yourself. And in that bargain, you trade authenticity for attachment. But if you approach love from a place of wholeness, if you know who you are, what you value, and what you stand for, then love becomes something entirely different. It's no longer a desperate grasp for completion. It's an act of abundance. It's a gift you choose to give, not a wound you're hoping someone else will heal. Bell Hooks called this loving from fullness. She argued that when we do the inner work, when we learn to nurture our own worth, sit with our own solitude, and build a meaningful life independent of another, love ceases to be about possession. It becomes an act of freedom. Two whole people don't cling to each other out of fear. They walk alongside each other out of choice. This is also where the deepest intimacy becomes possible. When two people stand whole, they can truly meet, not as halves completing a puzzle, but as equals building a shared world. They can challenge each other without fear of abandonment. They can create space without anxiety. They can fight and reconcile without losing themselves in the process. Love stops being a survival strategy and becomes a conscious collaboration. And perhaps most importantly, being whole alone teaches us one of love's hardest lessons: how to stay when we don't need to. There's a profound difference between staying because you cannot live without someone and staying because you choose to live with them. The latter is the soil from which mature, enduring love grows. So, if you want to build a relationship that lasts, begin with yourself. Learn to befriend your own solitude. Confront the parts of you that you hope someone else will fix. Build a life that is meaningful, even without a partner. Because the truth is, the more whole you are alone, the more deeply you can love another. In the end, love is not about two people becoming one. It's about two ones choosing to walk together, not out of lack, but out of fullness. And when love arises from fullness, it doesn't collapse under pressure. It expands. Why do most relationships collapse? It's not because love dies. It's because we misunderstand what love truly is. We enter it clinging to illusions that passion will sustain itself, that our partner will heal our wounds, that love means agreement, or that it will stay the same forever. But reality, as we've seen, is far more complex and far more beautiful. Let's briefly remember the 6 truths we have uncovered. Love is not just feeling, it is tension. It thrives in the paradox of closeness and distance, passion and struggle, desire and freedom. We fall for illusions and must learn to see. Love asks us to wake up from our projections and meet the real human being before us. Power always shapes love and must be balanced. Without mutual respect and equality, intimacy corrodes into control. Love demands transformation, not comfort. Relationships are not sanctuaries from growth. They are crucibles that forge who we become. We must allow love to evolve. It changes, softens, deepens, and so must we if we want it to last. To love fully, we must stand whole. Only those who have made peace with themselves can love without losing themselves. Each of these insights reveals something essential, that love is not a static noun, but a living verb, a process, a discipline, a philosophy. It's not something we find and then keep unchanged. It's something we practice, shape, and grow into. This is the truth Nietzsche hinted at when he wrote, "It is not a lack of love, but a lack of friendship that makes unhappy marriages." Friendship, in his sense, was not casual companionship. It was a shared striving towards something higher, and that is what lasting love really is. Two people committed to becoming more together than they could ever be apart. To love in this way is not easy. It demands courage to confront illusions, to let go of control, to grow when it's painful, to stand whole, even in loneliness. But in that difficulty lies the depth we all secretly crave, because when love stops being a fantasy and becomes a deliberate practice, it stops collapsing under the weight of reality. It becomes reality. So here is the invitation. Don't chase a perfect partner. Don't search for someone to fix you or complete you. Instead, become the kind of person capable of profound love, grounded, self-aware, humble, and brave. Build the inner life that allows you to walk beside someone as an equal, not as a half. And when you meet someone on that same path, walk with them, not clinging, not fearing, but choosing. The world is hungry for this kind of love. Plato, quiet, steady, transformative love. The kind that grows deeper with time. The kind that refuses to collapse, not because it is easy, but because it is true. And if this journey has resonated with you, if it has challenged, unsettled, or illuminated something inside you, I invite you to stay with us. Subscribe, reflect, share your thoughts below. We explore questions like this every week, not to give answers, but to walk alongside you as we search for them together. Because love, real love, is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of a lifelong practice